Hi everyone, welcome to Introducing AI Copilot for your startups. We are super delighted to have you all today. We can see that we have already a lot of you joining. So again, make yourself comfortable and hope you will enjoy this event today. So my name is Anne-Claire Bianco. I will be backstage because the person who is leading that presentation is Vinayak Hedge, who has created this content for you today. He's the CTO in residence for Microsoft for Startups, and he has supported many amazing founders and startups in our program. So without further ado, the floor is yours, Vinayak.
Thank you, Anne. Hi, everyone. My name is Vinay Hegde, and today I'm going to talk about introducing AI copilots for a startup, and we'll cover a little bit of ground about how do we build a copilot. We'll talk a little bit of OpenAI. So before I go further, I just wanted to cover cover the agenda. So initially, we'll talk about the Founders Hub benefits and OpenAI. Founders Hub is our platform for Microsoft for startups, where startups can actually get benefits, credits, and other incentives to build. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Copilot pattern. We'll look at a few use cases, both from startups and from Microsoft. And then we'll go a little deeper on the technical side. Um, into the Copilot stack, and then we'll end with further resources where you can learn on your own, and we'll also have Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and we will, as we go on, we'll keep on answering the questions, and we'll also take questions live from the selected questions towards the end, right? So without further ado, let's begin. So a little bit about Founders Hub. As I said, Microsoft Founders Hub is an online platform that grows with you, and you can build at your own pace, whether you're ideating, whether you're developing, whether you're growing, or you're scaling your product. So we have benefits at every stage, and benefits are not only in form of credits. We have both first-party and third-party credits, such as GitHub, Microsoft 365, OpenAI, Bubble, LinkedIn. And in addition to that, you can also receive mentorship and guidance from business leaders and technical experts, both through our Azure pairing program, which I'll talk a little bit later as we go along, and also our expert network, where you can connect with business leaders and technical leaders outside of your startup to either get specific advice on architecture or on GTM or any of the other things that you require when you are building your own startup. A little bit more detail. So this is only the partial benefits that we have, but it kind of gives you a sense of what are all the benefits that are available. So we have 4 levels in our program. At the first level, which is the ideate level, if you just started off building of something, we give you 1K of credits. We know how hard it is to both raise money in this environment, and so every little bit we want to help you both on the business side and on the technical side. So we have 1K for level 1, 5K for level 2, 25K for level 3, and 150K for level 4. And similarly, we have Azure support, standard support, M365 as you're growing your team, and they need access to various collaboration tools. We have GitHub Enterprise for helping you both collaborate for developers to collaborate internally, as well as do deployments very with a lot of confidence. And finally, I think I will be talking about OpenAI. So you get 2,500 worth of credits in OpenAI, as well as access to OpenAI team. So I want to call out one thing here, is that all of the Azure credits, that is like up to 150K worth of Azure credits. If you want, you can spend all of it on Azure OpenAI credits, which I will be talking later on as we go. So all of those credits, 150K worth of credits, can be used on Azure OpenAI, right? So with that, let me do a quick introduction to the capabilities of OpenAI and the partnership that we have with OpenAI, right? So OpenAI actually, the goal is for to ensure that the artificial general intelligence, for AGI as they call, benefits humanity. And as you've seen, it started with GPT-2, then GPT-3, and you have now access to GPT-4. So the models have gotten better and better. The capabilities have gotten better and better. You not only have text capabilities, but you also have like image generation capabilities. At Microsoft, our mission is to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more, and we have kind of combined both of them together to kind of offer these services, right? So with that kind of introduction, let me talk a little bit about why LLMs or foundation models are so different. So foundation models are very different because earlier you had individual models, and each individual model was labeled, and you had labeled data, and you trained the model to actually do a certain specific task well. It could be question answering, it could be sentiment analysis, it could be instruction following or object recognition. And that model did that thing and that thing really well. So what is different about foundation models is not only are they trained on a set of data that is very diverse, as you can see on the left hand side, which is text, images, speech, structured data, and also 3D signals. All of this goes into the training of data and is multi-stage training. I will reference this talk that you might want to look at by Andrej Karpathy. I will have a link towards end on the state of GPT, where he talks about all of this training. And also the other part is on the output side, the model itself can adapt it to do all of these tasks. And this task simultaneously, the same model can be used, which is quite unusual, right? So foundation models have been at the have been heart of many of the latest breakthroughs, and these have been kind of taken off since I think 2018 or so. Uh, so foundation model use self-supervised learning, and then they use transfer learning to apply the information learned in one situation or one task to the task that you're given it. And also again, training this task, as the talk I referenced says, is actually multi-stage, and it can be complex and resource intensive, right? So you can actually benefit from all of this. Again, like another, as I go on to the next slide, I want to kind of reference the emergent properties of LLMs, right? So what happened was very interesting. When you train the model, at certain point, the model actually becomes more and more capable, not in direct proportional to it, the number of parameters it has, but not only does become better at like question answering, but also becomes get better at arithmetic. For example, GPT-4 is actually quite good at doing some kind of medical diagnosis, or suggesting a medical drugs, for example, but it was not taught explicitly to do that, right? And there is some amount of research that is done on this. So this is why actually foundation models are so different from whatever we have seen in machine learning AI so far. So again, now that you know what LLMs are capable of, let's talk about the tools that will be required to build something like this. So with that, I want to talk about Azure AI Studio. So Azure AI Studio, and I'll be actually showing Azure AI Studio a little further on the slide. But I just want to tell you what all it's capable of. You can build and train your own models. You can ground Azure OpenAI service and OSS models using your data. Again, grounding is a concept I will cover later bit in the slide, so bear with me. I'll also be talking a little bit about vector indexing and retrieval augmented generation. And then it allows you to create prompt workflows, all of this while having the AI safety built in. And when we talk about AI safety, it is something that we truly believe that is at the center of what we build, because again, like a technology can be used for both good and bad, and if it is not exercised properly, it can have harmful effects. So like as it said, like this is a great technology, but like with great power, as Spider-Man says, with comes great responsibility. So we are also responsible to make sure that the AI is safely used. um, and hence we have Azure AI Safety that is built in, and there are three buckets in which you can use AI safety. One is testing, so that the responsible AI dashboard that is there, you can use the grounding in the prompt flow. When you generate images, for example, there is like media provenance that you can have in Bing and Designer. You can have audio watermark in the custom neural voice, so that it cannot be abused to uh, imitate somebody else without their authorization, or even if it is done, then it can be found out easily. Similarly, you on the deployment side, there is Azure AI content safety, and as you use Azure AI Studio, this is something that is built in at every layer. So with that in mind, let me, since I talked about both Azure OpenAI and OpenAI, let me move on to the next slide to talk about what are the differences between both of these. And then I'll quickly do a demo, and then we'll slowly go into the Copilot pattern and how you can harness this technology. So OpenAI, there are Azure OpenAI, there's several benefits. Right? If you look at the data grid that I have on data sharing, OpenAI says that data can be used for training the model, and until I think March 1st, 2023, they could use the data for training their own model. Now it is a little bit more opt-in, but explicitly Azure OpenAI says, hey, data is always owned by customers. It will never be used for and when I'm saying data, it also includes the prompts, right? Or the data that you use for fine-tuning your own specific model. So all of the data that you have, that you bring to the cloud, to Azure, that will be yours, your customers, and that will never be used by Microsoft. The other thing is, since a lot of this data is very sensitive, right? Especially if you are working highly regulated sectors like insurtech, fintech, healthcare, there is the models are have regulatory compliance, whether it's HIPAA, SOC 2, and there is enterprise level security, compliance, and governance tools built around that. So only specific people can get access to maybe training or to accessing it, depending on how you want to kind of develop your own tools, right? On OpenAI, there's API key-based authentication. It also has some kind of security and governance, but since we are developing it for the enterprise, we have this security built in. And when it comes to responsible AI, obviously there is some content and content filtering, harm reduction. But in our case, in the Azure OpenAI case, there's content filtering and moderation, and it's tunable according to use case. Finally, when it comes to SLA, Azure OpenAI gives guarantees of 99.9% uptime, because this is super important, and we have seen in the past that there have been challenges keeping OpenAI up. It's a new technology. It's got huge amount of demand, and it's hard as an engineer. I know it's hard that to keep it up, but this is something that we have guaranteed. So with that, let's move on to a couple of demos before we move on to the how to build a Copilot. So I'm going to show two demos. One is how do we extract entities from text, and the other one is how do we actually summarize text. So let's go with the first demo, right? Entity extraction is like a very common use case where you have specific formatted or unformatted data, and you want to extract, structured text from it. It could be like a phone number, it could be a physical email address from, or it could
This is
be email.
Vinay, apologies to yeah, we couldn't see your slide, so yeah, it's fine. We have the slide you were talking about.
Can you see the?
Now we can see OpenAI demo. It's fine.
Okay, okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, maybe some issue on my side in the network. Um, cool. So I was talking about entity extraction. So it understands that the phone numbers can have different kind of formats. It understands that physical addresses can have different formats, and it is able to adapt. So let me show you a demo of this really quickly. So this is the Azure OpenAI Studio, which I was talking about earlier, right? And as you can see, I've chosen the DaVinci model, and then I'm using an example where there is a little amount of text from an email, and have given a prompt. As a part of the prompt, I've asked it to extract the person name, the company name, the location, and the phone number. Now I'm expecting it to understand the text and give it back to me in a formatted manner. So let me press generate now, and actually see what is the data I give it. Also look at the parameters on the right hand side, for example temperature, which I'll cover in a little bit, and why that's important. So yeah, as you can see, it has got a person name. It's able to identify the company name, which is Contos Insurance. It's also able to figure out that Delaware is a location in the US. It's also able to understand the phone number, right? The phone number again has like an area code and then the number with a hyphen in between, but it's able to kind of figure out that very easily. So with that, let me move on to the next demo, which is summarize and then abstract what is there. So summarizing is again a common use case. Let's say you have a Copilot where you are actually taking in a lot of security related data, and you want to summarize what's going on. How does my network look? Is there an attack? Where is the attack coming from? So if I want that, or let's say if you have a use case where um, I have a legal service and I want to summarize judgments with and see what the precedents are for certain judgments. So summarizing is like a common use case. Or in the financial domain, you may want to summarize maybe the annual reports of filings which companies do. So you can use summarization to build abstracts. You can also use it to build table of contents, and you can actually abstract even larger amounts of text. So here we have a demo. Again, I'm using the Azure OpenAI Studio, which I talked about earlier. I'm selected a model, and I wanted to provide a summary of a text where uh, we are actually talking about AI, and what it does, and then the CTO of Azure AI Cognitive Services is talking about something, but it's a lot of text, and I want it to basically provide a summary of the text that captures its main idea. So I'm going to again press generate and see what it comes up with, and it should come up with a maybe a small short succinct summary. And again, if you see on the right hand side panel, I have given it a max length of tokens, which is the amount of tokens that it can generate. So again, it has generated a good summary, and it is able to do that quickly, in a manner that is very fast. So with that, let's move on to the meat of the presentation, which is the Copilot pattern. So I'll first cover what Copilot is, and then I will show you what different kind of use cases that can be used, and what is so special about this pattern. So what is Copilot, right? So Copilot is an application that uses modern AI, typically foundation models, to assist you to do with complex cognitive tasks, right? So much of the time, I think what was different about different kind of AI augmentation that we had was the tasks were not very complex or not cognitive. Again, it's a shifting boundary, right? So what we classify as intelligence changes with over a period of time, and we kind of come to accept it. But Copilot is something that augments users, right? So if you look at Copilot, right, one way of looking at it is Copilot is something that augments any user. It makes people more efficient. It is able to automate some mundane tasks. And when you have a lot of data, like we saw in the summarization case, right? You have a lot of data, whether it's in a financial filing, whether it's in a legal database, whether it's in your own intranet, right? And again, I'll show an example of that when I come to the demo of Aisera, where there's a lot of data on the internet, on the intranet, and you want to be able to find what you want really quickly. So it makes it easy to find signal in the noise. And what is so special about Copilot and the latest foundation model is you can use human language query. You don't need any specialized skill. You don't need to run SQL queries. You don't need to learn any kind of visualizer. You can ask your query in a human language, and it will reply back to you in a human language. It will do all of the different kinds of translations in the backend, but it will make your life real easy and interaction really easy. So this is very fundamental different from for people like me, who have always worked with computer for a couple of decades. Earlier you had a command line interface, then you had a point and click interface, but again, like you can use voice and text to interact with machines, and that is why it's like such a quantum leap in technology. And that's why many of you are today excited and have come to this talk. So with that, let's look at what are the different kind of experiences that Copilot can accelerate, right? So what was there earlier and what is there now? So if you were to compare and contrast the two worlds, earlier you had tools, now you have a creative assistant. Earlier you had a product specific help, now you can actually look at multiple different sources. Earlier you had to input a lot of data and generate content, text for example, or images. You had to kind of draw those images or create those images from scratch. Now you have content generation. Earlier you had to kind of type a bunch of commands, but now you actually type in a couple of commands. The Copilot comes back with specific suggestions either in text or in audio or video or any of the other formats, right? That is what we saw at the beginning. And With a human in the loop, you are able to curate. If you are not happy, you can regenerate, right? That is like, because it's a probabilistic system. So Copilot transforms the way we work. And in today's data and analytics tools, people have barely scratched the surface of what's possible. And just knowing how to best use a tool has become like a full-time job, right? So it has made us more productive. And again, like I said earlier, right? Earlier you had to use a specialized language like R, like SQL, Python. But all of that has gone away, because you can interact with the machine like you interact with your fellow human beings, and use natural language. So with that, let me actually show you a couple of copilots. Um, so if you see on the screen, right, there ChatGPT is a kind of copilot. You can actually talk to it, and you can ask it to teach you a language. You can ask it to um, help you deploy something on the cloud. You can ask it to build a travel itinerary. So it is like your personal assistant, right? Similarly, this kind of experience is now getting integrated in different tools. Some of you who are developers might be familiar with GitHub Copilot. So GitHub Copilot allows you to write code, right? So you can write tests for this function. You can ask it to write a Python function for maybe like checking passwords. You can also use Bing to generate images, right? And that's right within your browser. We recently launched Windows Copilot as well, where it allows you to maybe set your screen setting, or do updates all by using commands that you can type in. And this is what is like this is what is making it special, because you can integrate this augmented AI assisted personal assistant into every experience that you work with. Cool. So what is a copilot, right? If you were to kind of zoom in a little bit now as we go deeper into this presentation, it's a new kind of development pattern, which is very different from what we have done before, right? Because earlier, if we did ABC, we would get D, but here, if you do ABC, you might get sometimes D, you might get E, sometimes you might get F, and every time you generate, you get different things. And to have this, you need to have certain amounts of checks and balances, certain amount of tuning, and that means that you require a unique kind of architecture. And because you can actually query everything by using human language, we expect that it will be everywhere very, very soon. So now I'm going to give you an example of a little bit of a technical example about how this actually works in the backend, and how this a short glimpse into the architecture of how it is working for the M365 Copilot. So with that, just let me know if you cannot hear my video, but let me just.
Microsoft 365 Copilot is powered by what we call the Copilot system, a sophisticated processing and orchestration engine. It harnesses the power of three foundational technologies: the Microsoft 365 apps, that's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams, and more. The Microsoft Graph, that's all your content and context, your emails, files, meetings, chats, and calendar. And a large language model, or LLM.
So I'll pause a little bit here. While this is talking about M365 system, I just want to point out that these elements are very, very likely to be in your Copilot as well, right? So instead of Microsoft 365 apps, you will probably have your own app, your own user interface, your own business logic. And instead of the Microsoft Graph, you will have your own data. It could be your databases. It could be data that you pull from the web. It could be data that you pull from plugins, and we'll come to plugins in a little bit. And then the large language models could be either open source models like Llama, or or like the OpenAI models, or you could even build your own large language model. So you can either plug in your own model, or you could use like third party, right? So I just want to kind of make this distinction as you see through this video.
A creative engine capable of parsing and producing human-readable text, all accessible through natural language. It starts with a prompt from you in an app. Copilot pre-processes the prompt through an approach called grounding. Put simply, grounding improves the quality of the prompt, so you get answers that are relevant and actionable. One of the most important parts of grounding is making a call to the Microsoft Graph to retrieve your business content and context. Copilot combines this user data from the graph with other inputs to improve the prompt. It then sends that modified prompt to the LLM. You may be familiar with what an LLM can do based on your experience with ChatGPT or Bing Chat. Copilot takes the response from the LLM and post-processes it. This post-processing includes additional grounding calls to the graph, responsible AI checks, security, compliance, and privacy reviews, and command generation. Finally, Copilot sends a response to the user and commands back to the apps. Copilot iteratively processes and orchestrates these sophisticated services to produce a result that feels like magic.
Yeah, other than the things that I told you, I think what is most important, I think the keywords that are important in this is like it's a very iterative process, right? It's very unlike what we have done before, right? You generate something and see if it kind of works for you. If not, then you try it again. So it's a very iterative process. It's a very probabilistic process that is
Microsoft
that is there. So with that, I want to kind of talk about a couple of use cases again that are there uh, that have been built by startups. So Commerce.AI is a startup that is part of the MFS program. In fact, it's part of the MFS Pegasus program, which is a special program for larger startups that we have. And it basically takes different kinds of customer feedback from unstructured video, audio, photographic data, and obviously text, and then it uses this to actually increase productivity of its customer by harnessing this data. So the customers can then ask their own questions to the data that is gathered to figure out how to interact with customers, how to automate some of the tasks that the customers based on their ability and based on their own data. So you can see that there is a code by Andy Pandarikar, where he says that OpenAI models, the answer to our questions are ready the moment we ask them, which is quite unusual because earlier you had to trawl through a lot of data, convert that in, maybe put it into a data lake, and then maybe run models on it, or run analytics on it before you had to get. So OpenAI has changed that completely. Similarly, another startup that is part of our program, Aisera, which I talked about earlier, it provides solutions for AI ops and IT ops, and its product is so good that it actually won the Microsoft Partner of the Year award. In fact, if you see the link at the bottom, you will see that. If you see the link at the bottom, you will see that there is a very good demo of this in YouTube that you can run. And what it does is it's able to create human-like interactions for the enterprise. So, for example, if a new employee has joined and he or she wants to onboard for work applications, maybe get access to the CRM, or maybe get access to the internal wiki, take leaves, order any hardware they need for their work, or fix any IT issues or troubleshoot any software. What it does is, along with OpenAI and their own proprietary models, they are able to combine and get all of the data from across the intranet, and they are able to um, uh, help people actually not only find out information but also do a step-by-step process to be able to solve the problem, right? So for example, if they want to order a laptop, it will give a list of laptops to them. You can select one, and then maybe it will send it for approval, and once the approval is done, it will actually go and order that for you. So that is what is so that is what is so interesting about this Aisera Copilot. I also want to give an example of internal one about Microsoft Fabric, which was recently launched. So Microsoft Fabrics is an all-in-one analytics solutions for enterprises that covers everything from data movement to data science. So it's like a one true source of data to help you kind of access disparate sources of data. So it allows you to include data lake, data engineering, data integration all in one place. So I'm going to show you an example of how Copilot integrated into that is actually changing the game for a lot of our customers. So let me just play the video for you.
Next generation AI in Microsoft Fabric empowers you to unlock the full potential of your data. With Copilot integrated into every data experience, Microsoft Fabric lets you use natural language to bring your data to life. From integrating data to writing code, to finding insights and creating reports, new transformative AI experiences work alongside you every step of the way, so you can stay focused on getting value from your data. Copilot helps turn your words into data flows and data pipelines, so you can intelligently integrate data from anywhere. When writing code, Copilot automatically suggests code and entire functions in real time, and Copilot can guide you to create machine learning models to unlock insights in your data. Just by chatting with Copilot, you can visually explore your data to create stunning reports, discover insights, and summarize your data into easy-to-understand text narratives for sharing. With Copilot, you can turn insight into action with triggers that monitor your data and notify users. You can even create your own custom natural language experiences that combine Azure OpenAI models and your organization's data, and easily publish your creations as plugins. And with your data in Fabric, Copilot provides insights and answers everywhere work gets done. Most importantly, Microsoft Cloud runs on trust, which means your data always remains your data. Bring your data into the era of AI with Microsoft Fabric.
So as you saw this, one of the things that I want to focus on is not only as you saw the output was graphs, but it was also able to generate code. It was able to generate human language input. It was able to take what is a prior input, just like ChatGPT, and um, uh, prior output similar to ChatGPT, um, and actually use that to kind of create the experience and charting that you want. I have been a data analyst, and then it has kind of taken away the drudgery of of building those reports from that. Cool. With that, let's move on to the next session part. Actually, I quickly wanted to have a note on temperature, because one of the worries when people are using LLMs, especially because LLMs are probabilistic, is um, um, they are not experts that in some sense provide 100% reliable inputs. Rather, they provide a probabilistic outputs that can be guided by users, and that is where the human in the loop or the curation comes into part. So LLMs are prone to hallucinations. So it doesn't know whether what it is presenting is the true or not. That is actually for the human and the safety models that are built around it to generate. So when you use temperature, and there's another parameter called top P, you can actually set these to the lower temperature, especially if you are on the right hand side. If you see where you have the lower temperature, if you are using in an enterprise use case where you want more predictability, very much more commonplace answers, much more less creative answers, if I were to say, I would use that. But if I'm maybe generating poems, maybe generating a plot to a movie or a play, or trying to say something in a fairly more creative manner, or having to a persona, then I'll probably use a little more creativity. I have higher temperature and make it more random, right? So if you're doing more creative stuff like a designer integration, then probably you would set the temperature higher. If you're doing more like searching databases or internal internet, then I'll probably use lower temperature, right? And again, because you are using LLMs, some amount of latency, as you saw when I also did the demos, is unavoidable, right? Because it's actually doing a lot of computation, and it takes less compute to actually generate text, a little bit higher to generate images, and even higher to generate videos, right? So depending on the information output, I think the compute power also has to kind of go up. So again, there is the other challenge with LLMs is LLMs are trained on a certain set of data, and obviously because they sometime in the trained in sometime in the past, they may not have all of the latest information. But that's not acceptable to a lot of us, right? I want to know, for example, if I'm planning a vacation, not only I want to know where and what I can see, but I also want to know where I can book and what experiences I should do and what is the price for each. And again, this thing is very dynamic. So with that, I want to kind of introduce another concept that is very used very frequently with copilots, that is plugins. So plugins are basically helping you overcome this particular drawback of LLMs, right? So because LLMs trainings is in the past, any new data that you need to have, plugins can help you do that. So the way plugins do that is they augment AI systems to access APIs, and there can be APIs for everything, from pricing data that you want. It could be real estate data, it could be weather information, it could be stuff related to distances between two places. So there it could be a whole variety. It could be stock information, for example, right? So it allows you to retrieve any real-time information, any information that is in your knowledge base, for example, in your company docs, in your personal notes. It can also, the best part is, it can also assist users with actions. For example, booking a flight, ordering tickets, or setting up a meeting, right? In office context. And the best part is, the plugins that you have built in OpenAI actually work with any of the copilots that we have built. So there is interoperability. So you build it once and it should work easily. So again, to summarize, it will augment AI systems to access APIs, and APIs provide access to pretty much everything that is there on the web. It will help you retrieve useful information. It will help you perform new computations and safely act on your behalf to execute certain actions after you have given it consent. So what is this gamut of plugins that you can have? Turns out it's quite a lot, right? Everything from Adobe and Aisera, which I just showed you, to doing any kind of task management using Asana, travel booking using Kayak. There's a huge amount of stuff that you can do. You can use it to kind of pull or play any song from Spotify, or get reviews from TripAdvisor. So anything that has an API, you can integrate it very easily and into the plugin universe. Even if there's not an API, there is a plugin framework that you can use to build your own plugins, and those plugins can help you interface with your own internal databases, your own wiki. So you can actually, maybe if you're going through a piece of code and it references maybe some obscure standard or some internal acronym which you have not heard about, you can maybe just right click on that, and using your code tool, find out what that word means, and where you can find references for those. So plugins can actually build um, allow it, in some sense, like to Copilot to extend their learning and access the digital world. Think of it as Copilot as the brain of your maybe robot, and the plugins as some kind of actuators that allow you to interact with any of the digital world, right? So this is where like plugins and copilots go together. So anytime you're building a copilot, it's very likely to integrate various data sources or access the latest information. You will be either using some plugin or you will be building your own plugins. So those are important. So let's check out Copilot in another tool, which is Power BI, which allows you to create beautiful reports. And before I show this demo, I also want you to take a look at the UX. How are you interacting with the Copilot? Because as I go further into the talk, I'll talk about why UX is important and why design is important in Copilot. It's not all about AI, but also are these other elements that can actually help you make your Copilot better. So with that, let me just quickly play this video.
Let's take a look at how Copilot in Power BI is empowering everyone to quickly find and share insights. For example, say I'm an HR analyst who is constantly handling requests from my management to do analysis and provide answers. It can take hours and even days to respond with new reports. Now, with Copilot in Power BI, I can simply describe the report I want to build and get insights in seconds. Maybe we need to break down some of our employee data to understand demographics and hiring trends. I just described.
So I'll just pause here, but I just want you to pay an attention to the fact that I have the Copilot front end center, which was quite different from what I had earlier, which I had a side pane and where I was interacting and the reports were changing. So just keep that in mind as you look at this video.
What I need, and Copilot will automatically analyze my data and create a new report based on my needs. Immediately, I have a beautiful Power BI report that is fully interactive, and I can start slicing and dicing my data to explore deeper. Copilot added the charts and slicers I asked for, but also conveniently gives me options to adjust the output to get just what I'm looking for. For example, let's switch to ask for metrics and trends in a slightly different layout. Automatically, Copilot updates the report. Let's go ahead and keep this report page. But it goes much further. I can also ask analysis questions such as why is our attrition rate going up? Copilot responds by adding a new page to my report and uses Power BI's built-in advanced analysis capabilities for finding key influencers for variables in my data. In addition to giving me a summary of insight about different employee types having different attrition rates, I can easily explore Power BI's key influencer visual to see what's driving the biggest impact to our attrition rate. I can even automatically see the most significant segments in my data just by clicking. Now let's go back to the first page and finish up our new report. I'm going to ask Copilot to make it look like our existing exec dashboard, and instantly it's applied the same formatting and style and adjusted the layout to match. Best of all, I can still interact directly with the Power BI report that the Copilot has created for me. So for example, if I wanted to manually change this bar chart to a tree map on my own, it's easy to do so with just a few clicks. Let's add employee functional area, and now I can filter by that new field. Finally, to make the report even easier for my team to understand, I'm going to ask Copilot to add a rich text description of my data right inside the report. This narrative summary is fully dynamic, and not only does Copilot highlight interesting insights from my data, but it provides citations from where in the report the data was taken. This summary will update every time the data is refreshed or people filter the report with new insights based on the data. And just like that, in seconds, I've created a report that would have taken hours or days to do manually. Copilot, built on top of Azure OpenAI, is truly revolutionizing how we empower everyone to find and share insights.
Cool. As you see in this particular video, you can see that you are interacting with text, you're getting references, so there are no hallucinations. You are able to apply the layouts, you're able to change the styling, you are able to pull in new data, you are able to get the text summary. So you interacted in a bunch of different ways. This could have taken me days to actually get this to this format, but it's actually making you more productive. Yeah, and that is why these copilots are so different. And the best part is, again, I did all of this by human language, natural language, where I just described, right, which is like, in some sense, even as a jaded technologist, I feel like it's magic.
Let's take a
So now that you know what is possible, your first question will be, how do I build this, right? So we'll talk about how do we build a Copilot stack. And I'll first talk about what are the different patterns that are there in the Copilot stack, right? As you saw in the video, you started with the Copilot as the app foundation when you're building a report, but soon it transitioned to being like a helper in the app, right? So it moved to a side window, and you are interacting, and then there was something changing in the app, so it's making it very interactive. Similarly, we'll see that this is what is happening in GitHub Copilot as well. You are interacting with and asking it certain things, and it reflects that in the code. It suggests code, and then you can take that code and paste it, so the two panes are interacting with each other. The center one probably makes more useful if you are kind of generating images, and then you have to tweak either the color or different things. Like, for example, like if you were just to change the layout, like in the prior example, something like this would be really useful, right? And then there is the outside pattern, where Copilot not only is generating all of this, it is actually interacting with the external world. So it's orchestrating different kinds of things. So it's definitely pulling data. It is, for example, in the travel planning app, it will build you an itinerary. It will give references to each of those booking sites. It will tell you prices. So all of this orchestration, calling APIs, pulling data from different apps, having maybe like some kind of personalization where maybe it has your travel history, and it maybe kind of figures out, maybe you are from the you speak Spanish, and you're from Spanish part of the world, or maybe in Latin America. So it will actually take that into consideration, and maybe give very specific examples. So it is taking all of this data from across the board, and it's actually combining it to create that experience for you, right? So it is in some sense like an orchestrator that works for you. So I'm going to blow it up a little bit more from the outside in, and this is how the Copilot would look. And this is the Copilot stack that what Microsoft has used internally, and uh, uh, we felt that a lot of it was a lot of things were getting repeated, and we felt that okay, this is like a good way to build stuff, and this is what we recommend you also build your Copilot stack. So on the top you have apps where you have the plugin extensibility, and you have the Copilot itself that does the orchestration. Then there is the AI orchestration, which I'll get into a little bit more detail, and then finally you have the AI infrastructure on which it runs, and the foundation models that sit on top of it. So by the way, each of this is extensible. You can get in your own model, you can have your own plugin, and as we go along I'll give examples of that as well. So let's get into a little more detail, right? So this is how it looks in a little bit more detail. In the Copilot front end, you have the plugin extensibility, which surfaces information and pulls information and sees what's actually there in the UI. There's the UX itself that allows you to either query or put some sliders. So how the UX will look. So the UX will also not only decide how something should be presented, but how something should also be incorporated. And that's why I know I talked about the UX. So the UX is very important to capture the context and display information to the user to understand the user's intent. And while it might seem easy, it's not. And this is one area where I think having a good design can actually create a wonderful experience for a user. So while we are talking about AI, I think again I'm emphasizing that UX is just as important to think about. Let me talk a little bit about orchestration framework, right? So orchestration framework, in some sense, is the heart or the business model of your application, right? You can use, for example, semantic kernel, which we have open source and is for orchestration. There's also LangChain, which is also very very popular, and which is again open source that you can use for your orchestration. And then we recently also introduced another tool that works very closely with semantic kernel, LangChain. Unfortunately, because of the paucity of time, I won't be able to go deeper into this, but it's called PromptFlow. And we'll cover this in more detail in subsequent webinars that we do. I'll give details at the end. But I just wanted to give a high level overview of what are the different parts. So let's focus on the prompt and response filtering meta prompt. So what is a meta prompt? A meta prompt is a prompt that can be used to initiate a conversation with a chatbot or any other kind of AI powered tool. It is different from the AI prompt because uh, it 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 has an implication for every response that comes. So it is designed to be more general and versatile, and it can help format the response. For example, you might want the response to be in a JSON format, or might want the response to be in a form of a poem, or you might want the meta prompt to uh, uh, give you answers in maybe how maybe say some famous writer say like Mark Twain would answer, right? So you can do all kinds of fun things. You can use it to restrict your output. You can say, hey, you know what, make sure that you respond in a language that only a 5-year-old can understand. So you can do all of these things. So meta prompt is like the prompt that overrides any prompt that you give in the in the input in the API. And again, like prompt is again written and spoken grammar. So parts of speech, capitalization, abbreviation all matter. So clarity of input and accurate description really help. And again, if you are using it in a specific domain, having some amount of domain expertise and knowing your subject really helps, because you can figure out whether the responses are proper and relevant to your domain, or they are not. Right. So this is like very important. And again, good prompts are a compressed form of expressivity, and you can refine your prompts to get better answers. Next one, I promise you that I will talk about grounding, right? So what is grounding, and why is grounding important, right? I said LLMs can be prone to hallucinations, right? And which is basically giving wrong answers. So grounding is a process of using large language models with information that is use case specific, relevant, and not part of the LLM's trained knowledge. So it is crucial for ensuring the quality, accuracy, relevance of generated output. So LLMs are trained on a vast amount of knowledge, but they cannot have everything. For example, they may not have information about the internal storage, right? Because that is internal to you and it's not available outside. So how does the LLM actually use this, right? So to provide accurate and relevant output, we must provide LLMs with the necessary information. In other words, we need to ground it, right? For example, in the prior use case, you saw that when we asked it to generate a text description, it was able to give you specific references, and those came from grounding. And the pattern that is used for that, and this is something that will go into more detail later on as we go into the technical part, later part of the series. Is called retrieval augmented generation. So there's retrieval. So there's specific what is known as embeddings, which is basically your data that's converted into embeddings, and then you do a similarity search on vector databases to actually find out the stuff that is relevant to you, and then basically use that to generate the output. So quickly, a note about vector databases. A vector database is a type of database that stores data as high dimensional vectors, which are basically mathematical representations of features or attributes. So each vector has certain number of dimensions, and we basically apply some kind of transformation or embedding information to any kind of raw data. It could be text, images, audio, video, or anything else. And then you do basically a similarity search. Again, I'm glossing over a lot of technical details, but you basically do a similarity search and then find out what is the most relevant thing, right? So in the case of maybe say a legal search engine, it could be the most it could be the past cases which are most relevant to the case that you're searching, and you're searching for precedents. If you're looking for travel itinerary, it could mean that what are the specific towns that are in a certain maybe region or have a certain attribute, right? And attribute could be country, it could be anything else. Like for example, it could be like a weather could be an attribute at certain time of the year. So you do this. So you basically use this vector databases to pull out information, and using this information, you augment the output that is generated by the Copilot stack, right? So that is why retrieval augmented generation, or RAG as it's called, it's a very important concept, because it extends beyond the training of your LLM. Plugins is another one, that extending the plugins and plugin execution is another important part of the orchestration itself, because you have to figure out, how are you going to take the output or the prompt and convert into a query language which your plugin or the data can understand. For example, you can convert into SQL. It could mean that crawl and pull data from a vector database, or it could mean get data and references from a web index. So it could be a whole bunch of things, right? So plugin extensibility, plugin execution are also important parts of the plugin stack, which we covered earlier. Again, when I'm talking of foundational models, it is not just OpenAI, right? So you can use OpenAI and GPT models that are there, or DALI, or any of the other ones. You can also host your own fine-tuned models, which are very relevant for your particular domain, right? So it could be your fine-tuned models, OpenAI, or we have an integration with Hugging Face, where we have the Azure model catalog. So you can use a one-click deploy and pull that data in, and basically deploy something like Llama, for example. And when I'm talking about this, I would also again reference a talk by Andrej Karpathy on the state of GPT-4, which talks about how do you build models, and what are the training that is involved, because it goes into the difference between fine-tuning and prompt engineering, and what are the pros and cons of each, and what are what is the cost involved in doing each of these. So I would highly encourage you to look at that talk. So this is pretty much what I had to talk about, the Copilot stack. And then also note about AI safety, because AI safety is not something that is maybe at the UX or the orchestration or a foundation model. It's built in at every stage of a response. So thinking about building technology, you have to think about AI safety at every layer of the stack. And you'll see that there is some amount of AI safety and rules that are built in for filtering all of the data at every layer, and that's very critical. So with that, I will end this part of my presentation, and I will talk about what are some of the other next steps that you can quickly take. you can go to Founders Hub, and you can go to Founders Hub, and there will be a link that comes on the screen, and you can actually apply to Founders Hub, take all of the credits. You can also schedule your Azure pairing along with that. um, and yeah, as you can see the link below. And we also have the more deeper technical sessions following on, with which me and my counterparts will be doing. You can register for those, and the link is at the bottom, aka MFS AI Discovery Days 2003, where we'll be covering how do you enhance your startup solutions with dedicated Copilot experience. We'll go whatever we talked about in the Copilot stack, we'll go deeper into that. And the next talk will talk about how do you use AI Azure Studio to test it, deploy it, and customize each of those applications for various kinds of data. And finally, we'll talk about how do you build responsibility and responsible AI. What are the principles? What are the techniques that you use to build safety into every part of your stack? So we'll go in depth into this. So people who are more technical would be very happy to attend these talks, and I will highly encourage you to do that. Um, I'll leave this slide on for a couple of seconds. So if you have any feedback or what we should cover, obviously we can't cover all questions, but I can promise you that we are trying to help you better in three or four ways. One, obviously, we'll be taking questions at the end of this session. We also have people from my team actually answering questions in the chat. You can set up a Azure AI pairing session if you're part of Founders Hub to gain more, and you can also attend the different sessions that we're going to do. So if there are some specific scenarios that you're building for and you want more information, or there is some part that of what I talked about you want to be explored in more detail, please let us know. It will help us improve the series. Again, this was just as I said, an introduction, and we plan to go better. So you have the link at the bottom of your screen, but AKAMS MFS AI webinar feedback, or you can use your phone and give us this feedback. It will really help us improve this session. And also you get a chance to feature on the MFS blog. So if you have a very interesting story, we are always looking for startups that are building, because this area is so new. We would like to feature you just as we featured Aisera and Commerce.AI. Would love to feature you on our blog as well if you're part of Founders Hub. Yes, and these are the references. You might have seen some of these actually coming on the screen. And I'll leave this on for a couple of seconds, so you can actually either take a screenshot, or we'll also email this to you in a post-event email. But yeah, you can actually go to each of these different sessions, which actually go into each of the concepts that I talked into more detail. They allow you to build stuff. And again, I'm calling out Azure pairing. If you're part of Founders Hub, you can also set up a session with Azure pairing and get more help there. So thank you. Thanks a lot for your participation. And we might be able to take a couple more questions. So I think one of the questions is, when do you choose cognitive services versus OpenAI? Great question. I think we get this all the time. I would say that OpenAI is really good at any kind of text-based input. If you want to use, say, voice, or if you want to use image, sometimes we find that finely tuned models actually work better in those scenarios, right? So OpenAI is not like a Swiss Army knife that does everything well. It does some things well and others not so well. Plus, there might be your own models that you might want to use with the OpenAI service. So in places where you feel that, especially for speech and basically image recognition, you might find that cognitive services that we have are actually can be used in conjunction with the Azure OpenAI service, right? So it is not either or. It's sometimes either this or that, or most times it's combination of both. The link for my presentation we'll see if we can send it across in the email, and that should be able to help. I think one more question is, and I covered this actually in the presentation. So does Azure OpenAI hold data on Azure or send it to OpenAI? So OpenAI has the models. We host the models on Azure, and that service is offered to you as Azure OpenAI service, right? So the data that you have is not used for training any of the models. It is not. If you want to retain it, you can retain it. We don't use it. And again, it is ring fenced in your particular subscription. In fact, if you are because of if you have multiple subscriptions and you have multiple subscriptions, say for different customers, and different models for those, it will be kind of ring fenced in that particular enclave, and it won't leave that enclave. So the models are in the models are specific to you, and there is also, like, we are also coming up with certain features like provision capacity and assured uptime, those kind of details, so that your particular instance can be used. So the model is the same, but the instance is different, right? Just like you have a container repository, and then when you spawn a container, you get a different response, talking a bit of a technical language. Or if you have an image and you create a VM out of it, every VM is different. Similarly, the service model is built by OpenAI, but when you use Azure OpenAI service, you're using an instance of that. I think we are at the end of the session, so I hope to see you again. And let me just quickly go back to the AI Discovery Days, and if you can just run the banner for registering at the bottom. We would love to kind of host you in the AI Discovery Days, where we go deeper into each of these concepts. We will roughly have about 2 to 2.5 hours of content for each of those topics, and I hope to see you again back, and hope you enjoyed this. And we would love to have your feedback also. So if you haven't given your feedback, please let us know what we could do better. And if you want us to feature on the MFS blog, please let us know. We are always looking for interesting stories, because it's such a new field. We would love to hear from you. Thank you so much. And with that, I hope to see you again. And thank you very much for attending this. Bye. Have a good day or good night, depending on where you are.